Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Ichigo Awakens in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 16, the game begins. With Ichigo's group. The group of 7 flew through the empty sky in the sphere of spirit power, heading straight for the dome of Siridi. They focused on their tasks, their upcoming battles, their goals. Urayu and Chad said they had something to do for Kisuke, and Orium offered to go with them. Tatsuki said that there was someone that she wanted to meet for herself, and Ichigo had to find Yamamoto, and Ganju refused to abandon his new family member. They agreed to split up when they enter Siridi, allowing the others to perform their tasks and create as much disruption as they could, turning unwanted attention on some to others. Yamamoto. Ichigo silently prayed. Please, listen to reason in what I have to say. They collided with the barrier, fighting against the spirit-dispelling force of the Sekizeki stone against the Raishukaku's sphere. The two forces struggled until Ichigo stomped down on their shield and forced their way through. This unfortunately cracked the barrier and it dispelled the moment they got in the Siridi. In a way, I should have seen this coming. Ichigo mumbled before a whirlwind of energy tried to throw them all over. Chad dove straight out, becoming engulfed in flames as he fell towards Siridi with his mission in mind. Urayu and Orium held on long enough before falling out, Urayu controlling their descent with his Hirankyaku. Tatsuki jumped out with a smile on her face the second she saw her target, leaving Ichigo with his teacher and cousin, before the blast separated Yoryuki from them as well. Chad. Chad looked toward the ground, fearlessly bracing himself as he brought out his arm. No longer decorated with white and magenta lines, but an intricate pattern on a black arm with a long protrusion at his shoulder. As he neared the ground, he cushioned the impact with a single Reishi blast, slowing his descent and allowing him to roll onto the ground and diffuse the force of impact. Ichigo throws me harder than that, he thought to himself as he dusted himself off. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a case and GPS monitor, which he turned on, finding himself standing on top of one of the locations on the screen. Oddly convenient, he thought as he knelt back down and opened the case, revealing stickers with a Kido seal on them. He quickly attached one of the adhesive pictures to the ground his locator indicated, preparing to head for the next location. It's over here. He heard someone yell as he rose up, just in time for a small cell of 5 Shinigami to show up behind him. Freeze, Ryoka! The apparent leader yelled out as Chad moved toward them. Stand down and come quietly. Don't make us get. His earlier confidence fading as he felt Chad's spirit pressure and stature. This might have been a mistake, he mumbled as Chad cracked his knuckles. Ichigo and Ganju. Ichigo took some time to worry about his friends as they ended up flying in different directions. This was by unanimous choice, but he could still worry about them. The other few seconds were spent being annoyed as his Shiba cousin struggled to get in some position by pushing against Ichigo. Ganju, what are you doing? Ichigo asked over the rushing wind and fiery friction. Just give me a second, he responded before drawing a circle with an open palm. Turn to sand. Seppa, he yelled, sending the spell down and creating a pit of sand. I don't think so, Ichigo thought dryly before skating down normally on a flow of Reishi, landing just fine while Ganju slammed into the sand and ended up buried. You know, I think that should have ended differently than it did, he snarked as Ganju tried to recover from the rough landing. Oh, shut up, he yelled, finally able to talk again. If you could land so easily, why didn't you help me? Because I doubt Kyokaka wants to hear that her brother needed his hand held all the time, Ichigo quickly countered. You're supposed to be a tough guy, now start acting like one, he said, feeling 2 strong soul reapers appear on the wall behind him. The sooner the better. He turned to face the newcomers. Woohoo! What luck! The bald one cheered as the 2 jumped down. With him was a more elegant-looking guy with what seemed to be eyelash extensions. Can you believe this? First we skipped out on guard duty, and now the Ryoka we were expecting came right to us, he said before hopping around, singing about his luck. Now, let's have some fun. Tatsuki. She ran through the walled pathways of the Siridi, taking small breaks in available hiding places. She was excited. She knows the danger she's in being a trespasser in a military base, but she couldn't quell the burning excitement. Finally, a new opponent she could spar with and go all out against. Yuriuki only left it to a training level. Ichigo was someone she always spared with, and Orium just started. Now she had a chance to fight someone for real and not some mindless beasts. Yuriuki spoke fondly of her quarry, making Tatsuki all the more determined to find the elusive bee. Just you wait, Swaifon-senpai. She thought, dashing through the streets. I can't wait to fight you. Challenging her fellow disciple of the Flash Goddess was on the forefront of her mind, but there was something else that made her want to find the captain of the 2nd Division. All the while, she was completely unaware that she was being watched. I recognize those movements, she thought, watching the fireball run. Uriu and Orium. The duo landed safely on Orium's shield, demonstrating how much control and will she gained to effectively use her powers, in some kind of storage yard away from the others. Uriu handed Orium a case containing the same kind of stickers while he fished for the locator he's supposed to have. Uriu? Orium asked, feeling concerned for their friends. Do you think they'll be alright? I think it'll take a lieutenant class, minimum, to take one of us in, he said, finally finding the device. However, we should try to avoid getting noticed. No telling if what that captain from earlier said is true. Maybe we can ask politely, Orium asked. Uriu could only look at the ditzy girl with a dry expression. If you want, he said, relenting to the girl's puppy eyes. Try to do so before we knock them out, he said before getting a set of coordinates. Let's go, he said as they charged towards their destination, unaware of the Soul Reaper that was spying on them. Back to Ichigo. So, can you handle yourself in a fight? Ichigo asked his Shiba cousin, purposefully ignoring the bald man's dance and song about his luck. Of course I can, Ganju defended. I'm the toughest in all of West Rukon. Good, Ichigo said, ignoring the fact that Kyokaka was the real toughest. Then you can run along while I take care of this. Ganju was in a mix of shock and insult. Are you telling me to run? That I'm weak? He growled, mostly angry and hurt a little. If you can handle yourself then you can go on ahead, the hybrid said, Flash stepping in front of the dancer as he finished and delivered a strong elbow strike to the man's chest and sending him flying into a wall. Walls of iron sand, a priestly pagoda, glowing iron-clad fireflies. Standing upright, silent to the end, he chanted, keeping his hands clasped as 5 glowing orbs rose from his hands. Bakudo, number 75. Gakyuteken, he called out, raising his hands above his head and down on the other Shinigami. What beautiful execution, he thought before being knocked down by Ichigo bringing his fists down on his head followed by 5 large pillars pinning him in place. Ganju was amazed by Ichigo's power and ability. Rather than complain about having to leave, he decided to put faith in his cousin. He turned and ran off to the repentance cell, off to confront Rukia. Sorry about your friend, but I'd rather he not be followed, Ichigo said, turning to face the other Shinigami who finally came back. Think he'll be alright? TCH, Yumichiko will be fine, he said, having confidence in his longtime comrade. That was a little rude of you, interrupting my pre-fight dance like that. Blame my teachers, Ichigo retorted, stretching his arms out. And that Jinichimaru guy. I just wanted to have a friendly little chat with the head captain, then he comes and tries to kill me. He slowly shifted into a position more suited for fast reactions. Oh yeah, he said, remembering what happened yesterday. He was out of line, you were meant to be escorted directly to the commander, Ichigo Kurosaki. He regained his battle-hungry smirk as he continued to inform the hybrid of the events on the side of Siriti. However, Captain Ichimaru saw it as an opportunity to test the efficiency of the 13 court guard squads, so now we have to capture you and bring you in. The name's Ikeku Madarame, 3rd seat of Squad 11. He said, unsheathing his Zanpakuto. Pleased to meet ya Ichigo. Likewise, Ichigo said, taking out his own blade and settling into his relaxed stance. He never did take any single style, just acted on instinct, fluid, flexible, and most importantly, unpredictable. You sure are a dangerous one, Ikeku remarked. Having years of experience told him that while Ichigo seemed like he had no defense, he was very much ready. "You're just waiting for me to drop my dash." Ichigo flashed in front of Ikeku and swung his blade, with his opponent just barely having time to block. The force of the blow sent the bald fighter flying back while trying to relieve the shocks in his arms. When he landed, he was faced with another onslaught of attacks from the hybrid. "This feeling," he thought, trying to defend against the ferocity he was met with. "He's holding it back, but I know this feeling." The two finally separated as Ikeku needed to catch his breath. Ichigo wasn't even winded. "The sense of a monster, a beast far more terrifying than me." Through Ichigo's calm and stoic facade, Ikeku saw a version that was grinning savagely at the prospect of a challenge. "He's like Captain Zaraki." Ikeku took his chance to go on the offensive, swinging his blade for Ichigo's head. As predicted, Ichigo blocked the sword while almost unaware of Ikeku's sheath coming for his side. Ichigo grunted from the impact before slamming his head against Ikeku's and forcing distance between them again. "Nice one," Ichigo said, rubbing his ribs as the pain alleviated. "But you won't get another hit like that." He created another blade to companion the one he already had and settled into his own dual-wielding stance. "What the dash?" the third seat asked in surprise. "How did you do that?" "Captain-level technique," the hybrid explained. "Captains are required to control the form of their Zanpakutos, otherwise they'd be swinging towers. I just took it a step further. To quote Captain Ishine, when it comes to Soul Reapers, bitch I edit the wiki," he said, getting ready to charge. "What the hell's a wiki?" Ikeku roared as they clashed again, sparks flying from their blades with every strike. Ichigo was on the defense as he slowly got used to Ikeku's seemingly unpredictable style. "It's a website with information on a given subject," Ichigo responded as they slashed and parried each other before separating. "Find me in the living world when this is all over, I'll show ya," Ichigo said, slightly winded while Ikeku was breathing heavier. "Looks like the rumors were true," he said, giggling like a madman. "You did fight Captain Ichimaru, you did injure him, and you definitely are a force to be reckoned with." He straightened himself up. "I don't see myself winning this, but that doesn't mean I'm going to quit." He connected his blade and sheath on opposite ends and called out his Zanpakuto. "Extend." Hojikameru. The sword and sheath was engulfed in glowing light as it turned into a spear with a red tassel. "Let's cut loose." He charged, trying to catch Ichigo off guard. The hybrid just managed to dodge and ward off the onslaught of stabs, slashes, and swings. Finally he came down with a strong, heavy swing that made Ichigo use both hands to block, never knowing of the hidden danger in the attack. "Split!" Ikeku yelled, separating the three-part pole that was Hojikameru. Ichigo barely escaped, having a diagonal cut through his face as the price for his folly. "I'm sorry. I'm supposed to capture you alive, but fighting you excites me so much it's hard to hold back," he said, standing a few feet from Ichigo as he wiped the blood away from his face. "No worries, I understand," the hybrid said, already healing from the cut. "I just have to keep up." His swords transformed into the large kyber form he obtained as a first release. "But I've had enough of this," he said, unleashing more of his Ryutsu. "I've got places to be." Ikeku started to tremble, whether from primal fear or battle-hungry excitement, he wasn't sure. "Well Ikeku? What now?" "You're amazing," Ikeku managed to say. "What even are you?" he questioned as he charged, blade in one hand while spinning the opposite end. For a split second he saw Ichigo grunt in annoyed disappointment before he was slashed across his chest, his staff broken in half, as Ichigo then grabbed onto his face and slammed him into the ground. The warrior tried to move before Ichigo stomped down on his gaping cut. "Looks like I wasn't the only one holding back," Ichigo said, applying more pressure on Ikeku. "You knew about altering the size of the Zanpakuto, and you're a much more skilled fighter than you let on," he said while Ikeku groaned in pain, still pinned by Ichigo's strength. "You should have been giving me so much more trouble than what you did." The hybrid removed his foot and hauled the third seat to eye level. "Why did you hold back?" "You knew?" he asked surprised, with his strength slowing draining more and more. "How?" The people that trained me are still way stronger than I am, Ichigo explained before punching him in the face. I know when others hold back. Another blow to Ikeku. So, why hold back? He asked before cutting Ikeku, all in places that looked like he fought. Was it because you thought I was weak? Hardly. Ikeku managed to cough out. I'm just content where I am, serving under my captain. He explained as Ichigo let him go and stumble against a wall. He's the first man that ever really beat me, and set me on my path. He dropped to the ground, looking up at Ichigo and seeing a silhouette of his battle-scarred captain next to him. You remind me of him. If you're the strongest of your group, then he'll be looking for you, Ichigo. Sounds like fun. The young Shinigami said as he reverted and sheathed his blade. Tell him to meet me near the 1st Division barracks. He was about to walk off before realizing he had no idea where those barracks were. Which would be dash. Ikeku chuckled at the short-mindedness from someone that almost read him like a book. Off that way. He said, pointing off into the distance with his sword and took out his blood-clotting ointment. Great. I'll head there after I find my idiot cousin. Ichigo said before pausing in front of Ikeku one last time. Never hold back again. Aim for victory. Say you lose when you die. He told the Soul Reaper before running off to find Ganju. Ikeku again noted the similarities Ichigo had to his captain. He should be a good challenge for you, Captain. He muttered before the last of his strength left, holding out long enough to patch up his bleeding wounds. Maybe I should fight more seriously. He muttered before the darkness overcame him. With Urayu and Orium. The duo hid away on the roof of a random building, staying out of the sight of the large man with ragged clothes marked by the kanji for 11. Man being a generous term as he would probably fit the description of a beast much better. The main things out of place on him were the bells in his hair and the small girl on his shoulders. Looks like Baldy's sleeping. The pink-haired adolescent said, oddly cheerful despite her company. He must have lost too. To take out both Ikeku and Yumi Chika is impressive. The man said in a deep rough tone. But that fast is all the more exciting. He developed a snarling grin, growing more and more excited for the fight against the elusive Ichigo. And he left a landmark to go to. He said, pointing to the 5 chained pillars, standing tall in the relative distance. Let's go, Kenny. The girl cheered as the duo charged for their target. Once they were out of sight, the humans rose from their hiding spot. Sounds like they're headed for Ichigo. Orium said, worry for her lover coming through her voice. Seems like it. Urayu agreed. Though, this might be for the better. He caught Orium looking at him in confusion. Ichigo has never really fought before. He tried to explain. He's only ever had controlled sparring matches or was vastly superior to his opponent. He never had anyone to really push him to that kind of limit. There's something underneath that control, just waiting to come out. Are you saying that Ichigo is actually a very violent person? She asked, feeling a little scared. No. Urayu said, looking off to where his cousin went. He's a fighter, one that's burning to test and push himself. Urayu cursed that they needed to hold back, even now when they should be pushing themselves. But, according to his father, the Vandenreich watches from the shadows. He wasn't sure what that meant beyond be careful, so for now, he'll focus on their mission. Where's the next spot, Orium? He asked, turning to his companion. That way. Orium said, looking at the device and pointing to the right, unaware of the Soul Reaper trying to strike at her. Completely on instinct, Orium caught the giant man's wrist, slammed her elbow into his stomach, throwing him over her shoulder, stomping on his face while locking his arm in a ready position to dislocate his shoulder. All in the span of a second. OPPs. Sorry. She said sheepishly before kicking him unconscious. I tend to react without knowing now. I think I should worry for Ichigo about her instead. Urayu thought before they left. Chapter 17, Confrontations. With Yuriyuki. The black-haired feline made her way from rooftop to rooftop, keeping a watchful eye and sense on her young charges. Ichigo swiftly dealt with 2 seated officers of the 11th, filling the exiled noble with a sense of pride at his skill. Sato caused an explosive ruckus before practically disappearing from the eyes of the Shinigami. Orium made her laugh at her sudden reactions to the attempted sneak attack that left her opponent in unconscious heap. Tatsuki seemed a little overconfident with her desire to meet her little bee, but if she beats the crap out of that Omada guy that was the current lieutenant, she should get a meeting with SWAFON. Ganju was attracting attention like fat and weak buffalo to a pride of hungry lions, seeing as how he was being chased by almost half of Squad 11. I understand your enthusiasm, little fireball, Yoriyuki thought to herself as she continued to watch them, but you don't become a Black Ops head by being careless. She then saw Ichigo catch up to Ganju, and promptly crushed the nameless Soul Reapers in a second. I just hope Kyokaka won't be too harsh on that idiot. Ichigo is setting a rather high bar. She sweat dropped. It was then she noticed something interesting. Mayuri Kuratsuki and Kenpei Kazaraki were both heading toward the same place. Now what are you two doing? She questioned before following them. With Ichigo. Ganju. Ichigo started, feeling a slight headache, looking down on his cousin from the pile of Shinigami he sat on. I left you alone for, maybe 5 minutes. What the hell happened? He roared, gesturing to the group that was previously chasing the Shiba man, all of whom were beaten and unconscious. Well, Ganju scratched the back of his head nervously, I was running but these guys just showed up out of dash. Why the hell were you just running around? Don't you even know what stealth means? As the two Shibas argued over logical sense and manliness, they were unaware of the small, weak-looking combat medic that accidentally stumbled upon their location, until said Shinigami tripped and screamed. This caught their attention as they went over to the poor kid. What a pathetic-looking Soul Reaper. Ganju said, looking down on the guy with his chin-length brunette hair, small frame, and a medical bag on his body. Almost makes you feel sorry. Ichigo remarked before helping the guy up. Hey, what's your name? Hanataro Yamada. He said, unused to such kindness from strangers. I'm a member of Squad 4. He then screamed at the realization that he was in front of enemies, and one of them fought a captain on even ground. He was about to turn and run before Ichigo grabbed him by the shoulder. You mind giving us directions to where Rukia is being held? Ichigo asked the trembling medic in his kind older brother tone, which immediately helped Hanataro calm down enough to make rational decisions again. Sure. Aren't you Ichigo Kurosaki? Ichigo nodded in response, getting Hanataro to brighten up. Rukia told me so much about you. Come on, I'll show you the way. He cheered out, running off knowing that the two could catch up to him. He was always assigned janitorial duties by other Soul Reapers, but he never minded it. During the 2 weeks of Rukia's detainment in the Squad SIXS barracks, he met the petite beauty and talked with her. She told him about the man known as Ichigo and he developed an idolized image of him as a hero, and hopefully as a friend. He was eager to make a good first impression by helping him out. The cousins shrugged at each other, having no other leads but to follow. Ichigo decided to keep with them until someone else showed up that could escort the two. They seemed less than capable of their own protection. Squad 4 Hospital. Yoriyuki watched, finding amusement in Kuratsuka's anger at the silent third seat of the 11th Squad. She understood now why Urahara teased him as much as he did, it was hilarious. You expect me to believe that even though you fought him, you have absolutely nothing important to tell me? The psychotic clown growled, feeling his intelligence insulted that he would believe such a lie, or his ego for being denied anything useful on a possible research specimen. Nothing to tell you. Ikeko simply said. I know not his end goals or anything about him or his allies. He defeated me with superior speed, strength, and skill. Nothing you'd understand. Insolent little dash. Kuratsuka growled, raising his hand to punish Ikeko for his insults. Yoriyuki nearly jumped in, until the med scientist's wrist was caught in the crushing grip of Zaraki. I don't believe you're entitled to punish members of other squads, Mayuri. He calmly threatened, making the Squad 12 captain re-evaluate his options. Fine. He conceded, pulling his hand free from the berserker. You finish his interrogation. I have other matters to attend to. With the psycho out of the room, Yoriyuki relaxed and continued her observations. So you managed to fight Ichigo and you end up beaten and bloodied. Zaraki stated before adopting an excited smirk. Is he strong? Very. Ichigo responded. He almost reminded me of when we first met, Captain. When I warned him about you, he merely said to meet him at the 1st Division barracks. He keeps it down, but he craves a challenge all the same. He turned to the scarred man. I don't know if you can beat him. Fine with me. Zaraki said, keeping that bloodlust and thrill. It's been too long since my blood boiled like this. He turned and left his third-in-command to his recovery. His pink-haired lieutenant soon joined him. So where to now, Kenny? Yachiru asked, feeling the scarred man's excitement affecting her as well. Are we going to find Ichigo? Ichigo will come to us. He said, already running to Squad 1's barracks. And then, I have a grand fight. He yelled before laughing manically. Lieutenant's meeting. Renji and most of his fellow lieutenants listened as the latest report was delivered. Almost all of Squad 11 was out of commission, with several other seated officers being taken out with relative ease. Looks like there's actually some validity to Captain Ichimaru's actions, thought Renji. This is embarrassing for the Godi I-13. Just how much stronger are you, Ichigo? Continued sightings of one of the Ryoka heading for the 2nd Division barracks. The man delivering the report announced. They think they can challenge me. A large, balding, heavy-set man with a purple collar snorted. How embarrassing for me, the great Mareki Omada. He boasted unashamedly, causing everyone else to groan. What? Finishing out the report, sightings of Ichigo confirms that he's making his way to the Repentance cell, with one other and Squad 4 member, Hanataro Yamada, acting as their guide. Best case scenario. He continued with his report while Renji had heard what he wanted and made his way to intercept Ichigo. With Ichigo, they followed Hanataro through the sewer system that led to the closest they could get to the Repentance cell. Ichigo looked up to the enormous white tower, the prison holding his friend, and the execution she would go to if he couldn't stop this conspiracy plot. He then felt the familiar presence from earlier that month, one of the men that took Rukia away. It's been a while, Renji Abarai. Ichigo said, casually, unconcerned with the lieutenant who was walking towards him and his group. Yes, it has, Ichigo Kurosaki. The tattooed man said, following his captain's advice of not underestimating the Ryoka this time. Now let me tell you now, this won't end like last time. He growled, glaring at the man that humiliated him. A look Ichigo returned. Yeah, it won't. He agreed before walking off toward where Ikeko said that the 1st Division was located. Escort Ganju to Rukia, let him have his talk with her and he'll turn himself in. I have a meeting with the head captain and I'm late enough as it is. Hanataro and Ganju could only look on in surprise. A lieutenant-class Soul Reaper, and Ichigo was acting as if he was no threat. Renji's own surprise quickly shifted to more anger. Are you running away? He yelled at the hybrid. Do you think I'm weaker than you? Let me tell you now, Ichigo, captains and lieutenants Captains and lieutenants are required to have their Ryotsu limited when they go to the world of the living. Ichigo stated at the same time, silencing Renji again. In Soul Society, that restriction doesn't exist and they are 5 times stronger than otherwise. I know, Renji. He turned to look Renji dead in the eyes. But I'm not going to bother fighting someone with such a weak resolve. He prepared to continue on his way. Don't you dare dash. Renji began before a beam of pale light shot just an inch from his neck. Renji stood in shock, feeling his skin burn and blister from the heat of a nameless Byakurai that demonstrated a clear message. I've gotten much stronger, and I'm resolved in my actions. A point made with the amount of destruction that single beam caused. I could feel the conflict in your soul from the day we met. Ichigo told him, lowering his smoking hand. You never wanted to do anything to harm Rukia. I don't know your past together, but until you end that conflict you will never be able to beat me. He said, before continuing on his way. Renji dropped to his knees, beaten yet again, and treated like a pathetic rookie for the first time in a while. He was deaf and blind to the world, unaware of Hanataro applying first aid to his burns, as Ichigo's words echoed into his memories of the past 2 weeks. He realized, he wanted to help Rukia, believing that beating Ichigo could influence that in any way. He wanted to defeat his captain, the man that took her away and made them drift apart. But most of all, he wanted to redeem himself for being a terrible friend. He did nothing to stop them from losing their connection, didn't even object in the slightest to her arrest, and blamed someone else when he was met with himself. He made his plans and did as Ichigo told him, finding a place to rest for the remainder of the night before meeting with Rukia. "Ichigo!" he yelled, before the hybrid disappeared from sight. "Please! Save Rukia!" Ichigo said nothing before vanishing in a burst of speed. With Tatsuki, around the same time. Finally, the martial artist thought to herself, reaching the headquarters of the second squad of the Shinigami. Now Yuriuki always described her as petite with black hair, and since she's the current captain, she should be wearing a haori with a 2 on it. Or maybe I can force her out of hiding by beating the crap out of the idiots that have been following me. She yelled out, and letting the ninjas of the Onmitsukido, the covert police of Soul Society, know she knew they were following her. Little by little, they began to reveal themselves, with Marekiyo standing tall and proud. "You must be incredibly foolish to come here alone, little girl," Omada yelled out. He remembered the report from earlier. Wartime measures were being taken. The forces of the Siridi could no longer allow these human brats to keep showing them up. He had to prove the effectiveness of his squad and make his captain proud. "I, Lieutenant Marekiyo Omada, will show you your dash," he tried to say before Tatsuki slammed her knee into his face, resulting in a loud crunch that came from a broken nose. She then kicked him in the stomach, using that momentum to flip over him and threw him into the hard tile stones of the roof of the building they were on. She then locked his arms in place and swiftly dislocated them, finishing with a swift punch to his temple and knocking him out. "Time!" she yelled out to no one in particular. 2.5 seconds. Someone muttered out, surprised by the ferocity and efficiency she displayed. "Damn, too slow." Tatsuki cursed. "But whatever, you lot think this'll piss off your captain enough to come out?" she asked, standing on top of the unconscious heap that was a lieutenant. "If anything, you did me a favor." She turned and came face to face with the petite black-haired captain of Squad 2. "I'm Swyfon, captain of Squad 2. Surrender peacefully, Ryoka," she commanded in a no-nonsense way. Tatsuki met that with a determined grin. "Oh, I know who you are already," Tatsuki said, jumping off of the oaf. "Name's Tatsuki Arisawa, and I'm here for one thing." She immediately bowed before the captain while clasping her hands. "Please spar with me." For the first time in a long while, Swyfon was caught off guard and stared at the human in shock. "Huh?" she so eloquently asked, trying to make some sense of the situation before her. "Out of all the Ryoka, only 2 are permitted to fight captains," Tatsuki explained. "I'm not one of them, but I really want to fight you. It's been forever since I had a chance to really test my skills. If you let me spar with you, I'll surrender immediately after." Swyfon racked her brain, trying to figure this out. She's used to surprise attacks at night, poisons in her food and drinks, all-out ambushes, everything except for a sincere, upfront, sparring match request from an enemy. This was a new one for her. "Well, she said, some logical part of her mind still trying to catch up. "You did assault and embarrass my lieutenant in front of the entire squad." "Oh please, that guy is seriously your lieutenant." Tatsuki chuckled, getting up out of her bow. "That bloated, flashy, idiot is the honest-to-God lieutenant of the 2nd Division? Did he buy his way up the ladder, because no one's standards are that low? As much as I'd like to agree with you, he actually did earn his station." Now it was Tatsuki's turn to be completely shocked. Yeah, his method is to act like a boastful, egotistical idiot that only got his position through money to drop his opponent's guard. There was a pause between the two martial artists. Swyfon's expression went back to normal while Tatsuki was still bug-eyed. "It is a legitimate strategy, but not one I approve of. It gets really annoying." "I'm sorry, Captain. Omada managed to groan out, having finally come to. "Shut up, idiot." Only to be silenced again by the girls kicking him like a soccer ball shot out of a cannon. They shared a glance before giggling. "I like you, Arisawa," Swyfon told her. "You've earned that sparring match," she said before dropping to the ground and removing her haori, revealing her sleeveless and backless uniform. "But when I've had enough, I will end it," she said with a smirk. "Fine with me," Tatsuki called out with a grin, dropping down to join her. "I'll even tell you a secret I bet you're dying to know." With Ichigo. He made his way towards the old man, risking a slight headache with a single Pesquisa pulse to get a general direction and location. He found his target and charged toward who he expected was Yamamoto with determination, refusing any more detours, settling for only necessary delays instead. He expected Zaraki to be waiting for him, which could help his discussion with the commander to go much smoother if he was in no real condition to fight. That was the current plan anyway. Go to the 1st Division barracks, fight Zaraki, talk to Yamamoto, and expose Aizen somehow. It was supposed to be simple. But there was always a chance for a plan to hit a roadblock. He felt that roadblock and knew that this couldn't be avoided, so he dropped down and came face to face with his opponent. "Hello Ichigo Kurosaki," said the man. "I'm the captain of Squad 5, Sosuke Aizen." Chapter 18, Framed Crescent Moon. Swaifo vs. Tatsuki. The sky in the realm of Past on Souls was on fire with the light of the setting sun. The two martial artists stood a few feet apart from the other, waiting for the start of the fight. A brave soul among the patrol corps volunteered to referee the battle between the Hornet and Fireball. Rules stood as when one of them admits defeat, or was rendered incapable of fighting. No blades, no Kido, just martial arts. The women just kept their confident smirks as they wait, though Swaifo remained calm and focused while Tatsuki could barely contain her excitement. Off to the side, with the rest of the Onmitsukido, the appointed official raised his arm. "Begin," he yelled, bringing his arm down swiftly. The two charged at each other, Tatsuki throwing the first punch which Swaifo caught and deflected it. Managing to use that shift in balance, Tatsuki continued a furious assault of punches and kicks to her senior disciple of the Flash Goddess. Swaifo kept her focus and seemingly danced around every attack, dodging or deflecting every blow with relative ease. Once she had a clear opening she struck, slamming her palms against Tatsuki's midsection and sent her back several feet. "First blood," she quipped, Tatsuki already steadying herself. "Ready for more? I'd be disappointed if you gave up now." She just disappeared in a burst of shunpo and slammed her foot into Swaifo with similar results. "Don't worry, I can take a hit," she returned as Swaifo uncrossed her arms from blocking the near-sudden attack. "Keep this up and I'll make you my new lieutenant." The captain returned, pleased with the promise her challenger displayed. They again charged at each other and became locked in another exchange of blows, each one as unrelenting as the last to display their skills in bare-handed combat. It went on like that until the petite captain caught Tatsuki's wrist and twisted around to put her in an arm lock, pinning her right arm helplessly against her back. "Not to seem rude," Tatsuki groaned out in pain, "but I'd rather not go against my boyfriend and join the enemy. We're still on opposing sides, remember?" "Maybe so, but it's only a matter of time till you're all captured," she said, putting more pressure on Tatsuki's arm and forcing the girl to her knees. "You said it yourself, only two of you are supposed to be strong enough to fight captains." Tatsuki regained her smirk as she felt her hand press against the small captain's stomach. "Yeah, but that doesn't mean I'm a slouch either." "Doesn't that burn, by the way?" she asked, igniting her Reishi in her fist and summoning her fire. Swaifo jumped back in surprise and released Tatsuki, who kicked her legs out from under her and tried to slam her burning fist into the Onmitsukido commander's stomach. She was met only with stone as Swaifo escaped at the last second. "We agreed on no Kido," Swaifo growled, analyzing the mysterious ability her opponent displayed as her other fist ignited. "But that's not Kido, is it?" The two returned to their stances in preparation of the next assault. "You're so much better than me," Tatsuki defended, not the least bit bothered by her flames. "I needed an ace up my sleeve." She charged at the Hornet, the fires in her hands roaring as they flew through the air to find their target with every strike. So much heat in such a small flame, Swaifo thought as she dodged through the assault. The new ability Tatsuki displayed increased the effective range of her attacks, leaving small burns and singes on her as she tried to adapt to the sudden change. Does she actually know? No. It's not the same. A good imitation though. Definitely need her in my squad. After she managed to recognize the pattern in Tatsuki's movements, she made her move. Once again deflecting Tatsuki's punch and exposing her side. Predictable. Swaifon smirked, readying a disabling strike. She was unaware of Tatsuki's smirk as she turned on her own and got Swaifon with a spinning hook kick, with a little extra spice to it. My fists aren't the only ones that burn. She explained as Swaifon slid to a halt on the ground, grasping her shoulder as the remnants of the spirit fire continued to burn her. She stood up as Tatsuki ignited her feet as well. That's my point, Captain. She said before charging again, putting Swaifon on the defensive as she had to dodge the fiery strikes. Her shoulder still burned from the earlier attack and it put her on guard. For as much danger she was in and the duty she had to uphold, she found herself enjoying the match. It's not often that she gets a challenge that actually tests her in such a manner. She disappeared in a burst of speed to gain some distance and rethink a strategy. Skilled martial artist, interesting ability, maybe some more work on her shunpo. Swaifon evaluated Tatsuki in her head. Omada, say hello to your replacement. She finished before Tatsuki spotted her on a spire and threw a punch. Meteor strike. Tatsuki yelled, shooting off a fireball at her opponent. Swaifon barely managed to dodge the explosion when the ball connected to the building. Tatsuki winced from the accidental damage she caused. Sorry. Still working on that. She apologized. Just something we'll have to work on when you join the stealth force. Swaifon said, disapproving of the flashiness of the move. Should be easy to fix. Understood. Thanks, senpai. Tatsuki let out carelessly, making Swaifon stiffen. What did you call me? She said, shaken. She knew that Tatsuki didn't attend the academy, and her movements were so familiar. Now she understood why. I said Senator Pai. Tatsuki realized her mistake. Right, Sensei said you'd still be mad at Dash. She didn't even see it coming, barely felt it until she saw Swaifon in front of her with her fist buried in her gut, right on the solar plexus. Tatsuki coughed out in pain as she was tripped and both her arms nearly torn out of their sockets and Swaifon dislocated them. The moment she landed face first, Swaifon pinned her there with a near-death grip on her neck. I'm done with this spar, Arisawa. The captain said coldly as her squad members came over to retrieve the defeated Ryoka. It was a good match, so I'll give you some advice. Leave her, she doesn't care about her students. She said bitterly, never forgiving the woman she once looked up to. She heard Tatsuki gasp out with some laughter. I'll keep that in mind. She groaned out, ignoring the pain in her chest. By the way, still wanna hear that secret? She called out to the back facing her. It has to do with why she left you. Ichigo vs Aizen. I'm the captain of Squad 5, Sosuke Aizen. The man across the hybrid said. He spoke gently, mockingly as he was sure Ichigo knew who he was and his intentions. The hybrid said nothing as the two stood across from one another. If you would be so kind, Dash. He unsheathed his blade as Ichigo instantly appeared before him and swung his blade. He effortlessly blocked the attack as a shockwave created a gust of wind. To let me finish? And you called Renji rude. The difference is that Byakuya was actually interested in what I had to say. Ichigo said, charging his energy for a familiar ability. There is nothing you have to say that I care about. Getsuga Tenshou. He roared, hitting Aizen point blank with a black and blue wave of energy. The blast left a giant gash in the ground and reduced several buildings to rubble. Ichigo scanned the cloud of dust for his opponent. I know what you're after and you won't stop me from reaching Yamamoto. Do you mean to tell him about my goals with the Hogyaku? Aizen said from behind Ichigo as 6 beams of light impaled him. Do you really think he'll believe the words of a Ryoka or the student of exiles over a captain that's served loyally for a century? He asked before blocking another strike as the trapped Ichigo disappeared. Actually, I was going to tell him about an actual threat. Not some arrogant child attempting to play God. Aizen glared at the hybrid in front of him. Did I actually strike a nerve on the great Aizen? Ichigo asked before Aizen got behind him and left a deep gash in his back. I thought you wanted to get to Yamamoto as soon as possible. He said to the boy as he staggered in pain. How do you expect to get to him if you spend all your time talking to me? Guess you're right. Ichigo said as he straightened up, already healed from the deep cut in his back. If we're going to keep exchanging banter till one of us dies, we'll be here till morning. Ichigo rolled and stretched his limbs in preparation. So I'm not going to bother being subtle with this, neither of us are going to go all out and I doubt you'll benefit in killing me now. He faced his opponent and settled into his stance. Is this just to get an idea of my current power, or are you staging a show? Could be both, could be neither. Aizen returned, readying himself. You will never succeed, Kurosaki. Shedder, Kyoka Deshi never finished his release phrase before Ichigo attacked him furiously, forcing the captain on the defensive. The training from Urahara and Yoryuki showed as every blow was filled with an intent to kill, so subtle that the only way to confirm the intentions of every strike was that each one was aimed for a vital area. Aizen easily met every strike, the danger actually making him focus on defense. Could he? No, that's impossible. No one knows. Aizen thought to himself as Ichigo continued his assault. Cannot let him use his illusion ability, absolutely can't. Ichigo told himself, knowing that anything less than lethal intent would do little to give the man pause. Ichigo was caught off guard as Aizen managed to disarm Ichigo of his blade as he twisted it out of his hands. Left with his bare fists, Ichigo increased his speed suddenly and struck Aizen in the chest with a palm attack. Aizen attempted to get some distance but Ichigo stayed inside his guard, doing his best to disable or at least crush his throat. Just as Ichigo seemed to get the upper hand, Aizen made another deep slash through Ichigo's throat. Bakudo number 61, Ryukyukoro. Aizen recited, trapping the boy with the rods of light again. Foolish boy. All those years of preparation, all that training, all of it amounting to nothing. Even with me holding back. What a disappointment you turned out to be. He closed his eyes in shame at the display of Ichigo's abilities, secretly hoping for him to prove him wrong. He opened his eyes to see Ichigo in front of him with his arm glowing in concentrated Reishi. Getchuga! Ichigo yelled, striking Aizen in the chest with a fist and blast of Reishi, sending him back several feet. Not lightening up, he aimed his palm at the man again with a ball of crackling energy ready. Heido number 63, Reikoho. He fired the blast of energy at the man as he ended up buried in rubble. Like I said, Ichigo growled as he summoned his sword back to him, you will not stop me Aizen. He released the first form of his blade and raised it up for next attack. Getchuga Tensho. He roared, sending a wave of his destructive power at the man, destroying everything in its path. He grunted, feeling himself losing to his bloodlust. No. Gotta stay focused. Can't reveal any more Hollow or Quincy abilities. He yelled to himself, trying to suppress his inner beast. Not bad, he heard from behind as Aizen sunk his blade into his body, but you are still too weak. Heido number 11, Tsuyuzuri Raiden. He said, sending millions of volts of spirit electricity through Ichigo's body. The hybrid could only drop to his knees helplessly as his muscles clenched and his fries from the inside. I was hoping that you would be an ultimate being, capable of standing at my side in the end. But you have proven weak, feeble. Maybe, next time I try, I will use one of your sisters to birth my creation. Aizen mused, purposefully goading the hybrid. The worst part was that Ichigo knew that was his goal, but he didn't care. Don't you dare! Ichigo roared, forcing himself up and uppercutting Aizen with all his strength. Ichigo's veins were glowing and bulging out with his eyes shifting colors and his riot so flaring about his body. He rocketed toward Aizen, creating 3 separate speed clones that each attacked the captain. The man flew higher until he felt a bind around his body. He found a rope of light binding him as Ichigo ripped him toward the ground. As they neared, Ichigo grabbed hold of him and used the momentum to spin them around and threw the manipulator into the ground at a greater velocity. As soon as Aizen collided with the ground, Ichigo aimed his palms again for another Kido spell. Ya Lord! Mask of blood and flesh, all creation, flutter of wings, ya who bears the name of man. Inferno and pandemonium, the sea barrier surges, march on to the south. Heido number 31, Shakkeiho. Ichigo chanted, creating a massive fireball. A fine display of power, but not enough. Aizen thought before shielding himself with a Danku, holding off the majority of Ichigo's fireball. After the blast ended, he saw over 100 more appearing everywhere above him and shooting down like rain. That's a new one. Aizen idly thought before the punishing bombardment slammed into his barrier, eventually breaking it. Ichigo landed on the ground, almost 100 feet away. Shatter, Kyoka Suijutsu dash, he attempted before feeling himself get impaled and shot back into another building, this one collapsing on top of him. Ichigo's blade retracting to a normal length. In retrospect, Ichigo panted as he finally calmed down. This was a really bad idea. He looked down at his bloodied sword, now returned to its sealed state for that final attack. Every bit as difficult as he thought it would be, but he felt something was off about this. Captain Aizen. He heard a woman scream. He turned and saw a petite distraught girl, looking at where Aizen last was before turning to glare at the hybrid. You murderer. Aw crap. He whispered as he saw more lieutenants reveal themselves in the pale moonlight, all looking at him in shock. He tried to figure a way out while ignoring a sudden itch in his body. With Aizen. That boy is definitely something. He said, focusing his Kido into healing the wound in his side. He's able to mix and blend his abilities to frightening extents. Generating Reishi platforms is a focus for Kido, mixing Sonido and Shunpo, concentrating his Reishi through his own body. Ichigo, you will be a fascinating being. He ceased his spell as he finally healed from his stab wound. Didn't expect him to mimic Jin's Shikai like that. Maybe I should have gotten to you first. No matter. He rose up and returned to the building of the Central 46. With this, you will be the most wanted man in Soul Society and your friends will be executed. He said, looking down at his Zanpakuto. An elegant blade, despite missing 2 inches of the tip. That part of the blade was still embedded inside Ichigo, breaking off when he turned to attack him in that final assault. This will not protect you, Ichigo. The other captains will kill you for me. With Kenpeki and Yamamoto. Wow Kenny. Ichi must be really strong. Yachiru exclaimed from her captain's shoulder. The scarred man could only grin in anticipation. Yeah, that definitely looks like a worthwhile fight. The Kenpeki said in his ever-gravely voice. Do you not care that he killed Captain Aizen? The old commander by his side asked. When Zaraki heard of where he could expect to meet his chosen opponent, he made his way into Yamamoto's barracks and settled down, waiting patiently for Ichigo to arrive. The old man allowed it, as he figured the simplistic nature of the bloodthirsty fighter might inspire some revelation to some of his questions. I couldn't give a damn who dies. That just means they were weak. He said, completely without care. Though it does surprise me. Aizen said that he wanted to help save that Kukaki girl and he was going to do everything to help do that. You'd think Ichigo would take him up on that offer. Indeed. Yamamoto mused. Ichigo Kurosaki. When you and your friends were attacked with the intent of capture, you defeated them without killing them. Aizen finds you and tries to help you, you kill him in cold blood. What is happening? He questioned as he enjoyed the rest of his tea. Chapter 19, Recovery and Reactions. With Ichigo. The orange-haired warrior stood there, in the pale light of the moon amidst the wreckage and rubble of his clash with the captain. He wasn't aware of the gathering audience or even what they saw. His knowledge about Aizen's abilities were simply that of illusions, not the extent of it. He surveyed the soul reapers surrounding him, the distraught petite girl with her hair in a bun, a man with a tattoo of 69 on his face, another wearing sunglasses with a thin mustache, a third with long blonde hair covering an eye, a woman with wavy blonde hair and huge assets, and Jinichi with a shorter white-haired boy wearing an haori. 2 captains, one of which tried to kill me earlier. He thought to himself as he analyzed his situation, noting the badges on the others' arms. Along with 5 lieutenants. Ichigo felt the stress of the earlier fight seep into his body, making him feel weaker and weaker. Can I talk my way out of this? You murderer! The petite girl screamed, charging at him with hate in her eyes. Guess not. He realized with finality as the girl called out her blade, turning it into a multi-pronged sword on fire. When she got within 5 feet of him, however, he stopped her cold in her tracks with a large hand wrapped tightly around her neck. I need to get out of here, that fight took too much out of me. He tightened his grip as she struggled feebly in his hand, already weakening from the cut-off blood flow to her brain. He loosened his grip when she stopped struggling, leaving her only unconscious. It did not look good to the others watching this. Momo! He heard them cry out as he let the girl down as gently and quickly as possible. He barely had enough time to avoid the spinning twin-sided scythe blade, causing him to jump away from the downed girl. "You bastard!" the man with the tattoo called out. Guessing Aizen had them under his illusion before the fight. He tried to focus while dodging the blades as the lieutenant charged at him with both Kusarigama poles while the Yakuza man attacked him with a large scimitar blade that had a pick below the tip. Both were relentless in their attacks, making Ichigo bend and weave through their attacks, unaware of the blonde lieutenant's chanting of a Kido spell. He was impaled with the familiar rods of light which slowed him enough for both of his attackers to strike him. Both attacks hit true as the cold steel dug their way into his flesh, or that was the intention at least. When they made contact, they bounced off of him harmlessly. "Impossible!" the white-haired Hitsugaya gasped. "Just how much power does he have?" He dimmed his own abilities for being too dangerous to allow him to join in the fight, wanting to immediately kill the Ryoka for daring to harm his friend. More than enough, Jin thought as he watched the fight, losing his fox-like smirk to analyze the hybrid. "That's a terrifying arrow he has," he thought before Ichigo forced his opponents away with a massive pulse of his Ryotsu. Near-perfect regeneration, strong defense, amazing Ryotsu control and manipulation. And best of all, he'll only get stronger. He felt himself grin. He'll do nicely. He saw Hisagi throw his Shikai blade one more time at the hybrid. "I can't wait any longer," Ichigo growled in his mind. Just as the spinning blades passed him, he grabbed onto the chain and wrapped it around his arm. The look of shock on the lieutenant was enough for Ichigo to yank on the chain and swing him around like a flail. After watching his ally get slammed into several hard surfaces, the Yakuza-looking man tried to attack Ichigo again. Ichigo sent him flying back with a punch to his gut and further back as Hisagi collided with him. "Heido number 11, Tsuzuri Raiden," he whispered, sending an electric current through the chain and turning the two into light bulbs. "Raise your head, Wabisuk," he heard from behind him. He released Zanjutsu in time to turn and block a relentless assault from the Squad 3 lieutenant and his hook-shaped blade. When he backed off, Ichigo nearly collapsed at the sudden change of weight in his sword. "My blade doubles the weight of anything it strikes. I've struck your sword over 20 times, you can no longer lift your blade," the man said as he hooked Ichigo's neck with his sword. "Submit, and atone for the sin of hurting my friends," he said as he pulled. "Izuru. That's not going to work," Jin called out to his lieutenant. Sure enough, the blade barely made a scratch in the hybrid. Ichigo merely grabbed the blade and removed it from his neck before calmly raising up his sword. Kira was watching in dismay as Ichigo clearly demonstrated his prowess. "Next time I see you, tell me how much this hurts," he said before swinging the flat of his blade like a club and sending the man flying. "Damn, I could barely keep that going," he said before changing his blade and removing the effects. "That was really heavy. Sit upon the frosted heavens, higher in Meru," the child captain called out. In the midst of the onslaught against the hybrid, his lieutenant Rangiku managed to pull his childhood friend Momo out of harm's way. With the other lieutenants out of his range, he and Ichimaru could now get involved. He sent a few of his ice dragons down on the lone Ryoka. He saw Ichigo scan the area and seemed relieved that he was alone. He saw a dark red ball of energy coalesce in his hand. "Is that he thought in confusion before Ichigo thrust his hand at him and unleashed the torrent of power. "Bakudo number 39, Inkosen," Jin yelled out, getting in front of his colleague with a round orange shield before Ichigo's Zero destroyed the dragons and blast even them away. Is he already at the level of an Espada? Jin wondered, thinking back to Aizen's army and comparing the powers of the two. Before he could do anything else, a massive thick cloud of red smoke exploded from Ichigo's position and his Ryotsu seemed to disappear. "That project worked a little too well, Aizen. This boy is going to kill you," he predicted as reinforcements came too late. "Ichigo has disappeared. With Ichigo. Ow, 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 ow," the hybrid chanted as he speed-walked toward another sewer entrance to hide and lick his wounds. With the danger gone and his adrenaline wearing away, that dull itch in his side became a sharp pain, like something was carving away at his insides. "Damn you, Aizen!" he cursed, feeling himself weakening more and more. This is going to make talking to Yamamoto a bit worrisome. He managed to find his way to a safe place and collapsed on the floor. Back in a sewer system, almost completely drained, and they know I have hollow powers. Ichigo grunted. "I need a nap," he mumbled before darkness took him. Unaware of several figures in white appearing from behind him. With Renji. He stood, watching in shock and awe at the battle that transpired. He brought Ganju and Hanataro to a good resting spot for the night, and it wouldn't be too much longer till they get to Rukia's cell. He sent out a couple hell butterflies informing both his captain and the head captain of what was happening with him. He confronted Ichigo and was completely outclassed in a single move. He would take the other Ryoka and bring him to the Repentance cell to settle a personal issue of some kind, and Ichigo was determined to reach the commander. While the others slept, he stood as a sentinel against any that might show up for some meager ounce of glory or something else idiotic. That's when he saw explosions of force and Reishi. He immediately realized that Ichigo was fighting, and was glad that Ichigo chose not to fight him. After some time the struggle died down and he heard an echoing scream of despair that stretched all over the Siraidai. "Captain Aizen!" He heard Hinamori scream. That caught the tattooed lieutenant's attention. "You murderer!" Renji was shocked at that. "Ichigo, you killed." Renji didn't know Ichigo at all personally, just that he had the presence of a powerful and honorable warrior. Rukia told him more as a man that would fight to protect anyone if he could help. Everything he heard about Ichigo and everything he knew about Aizen told him that the two would be friends, allies. Aizen would bring Ichigo to the commander, they discuss Rukia's case and get her amnesty, and he'd be placed under strict observation until the event that he could fully become a Soul Reaper. But now? Ichigo killed Aizen? What was going on? The battle continued with Lieutenants Kira, Hisagi, and Tetsuzumon proving no challenge and Captain Hitsugaya attempting to attack, only for his Shikai to be overpowered with a hollow Zero. "Ichigo! What the hell are you?" With Tatsuki, Squad 2 Barracks. Tatsuki lay on her cell cot, resting and waiting with guards on standby to act. Despite what happened after the spar, Tatsuki was being treated rather well. The interrogation didn't yield too much they didn't already know, other than who could fight captains. Tatsuki was being a well-behaved prisoner, so she was being treated relatively well. It wasn't until Ichigo's fight with Aizen started did she react. "What's going on?" she asked one of her guards when a member of the patrol corps came in when the fight ended. The last thing she felt about her lover's Ryotsu was that it was fluctuating from focused to chaotic and weak. She was sitting at the edge of the cot with anticipation and worry. Apparently Ichigo met with Captain Aizen. The messenger stated. Aizen offered to help Ichigo, who instantly attacked with no other provocation. Her teachers never said anything about Aizen to her, all she knew was that he was never to be trusted. But for Ichigo to simply attack someone out of the blue? He must know something about Aizen she clearly didn't. Captain Aizen stated his intentions to save the prisoner, but Ichigo responded that he didn't care about the prisoner before fatally injuring the captain. Ichigo Kurosaka disappeared without a trace shortly after disabling Lieutenants Momo Hinamori, Izuru Kira, Shihei Hisagi, and Tetsuzumon Iba. Tatsuki felt sick and numb, all the strength drained from her. Same orders apply. Capture the Ryoka, by any means necessary. He didn't say it, but the implications were clear. Lethal force is permitted. Only Captain-class Soul Reapers may confront Ichigo Kurosaki. With Chad. He was resting after a long day of running around, evading patrols, beating the crap out of other Soul Reapers, placing tags all over the Siraidai, and he still had more to do. He had the energy, more than enough to keep going. Endurance, stamina, and strength were the things Tatsuki couldn't beat him at, and he wasn't too far behind Ichigo's level in those areas. The reason he needed to rest was to calm himself down. Ichigo was in trouble, he felt it. He should find him, watch his back, shield him when he can't protect himself. But he had his mission, and Ichigo trusted him. Thinking back on last night when they talked. Flashback. "Hey Chad, what's with those packets you gave to Ganju's friends?" Ichigo asked before they all retired for the night. "I don't know. Something Urahara gave me. said, 5 in every district and where the pressure seemed greatest. He told me and Uriah to place these in hotspots all over Siriti. He explained. He didn't say it, but he felt uneasy about abandoning Ichigo in enemy territory. Don't even think about it, Chad. Ichigo quickly said. I don't care how bad it gets, you have a mission and you see it through to the end. Don't worry about me. 'Cause I'm not worried about you. He said, making the giant look at him questioningly. I have too much faith in you to worry about you dying on me. He answered, throwing a confident smile to his longtime friend. It eased Sato's nerves as he fell asleep for the night. Flashback end. Ichigo. He mumbled, rubbing the medallion on his neck. You'll be fine. He said, reassuring himself before lying down to rest for a time. I'm sorry for being a bad friend. I can't help but be worried about you from time to time. I swear to never let you down though. He let the darkness take him. With Uriah and Orium. The duo finished placing the next patch at their current location when they felt Ichigo's battle. Orium desperately wanted to get to his side, but Uriah managed to calm her down by reminding her how outclassed she would be. Best to let Ichigo finish his fight when she could be safe from the crossfire. By the time the dust settled and it was safe to go to him, he vanished. Uriah became the victim of an angry Orium and her less than happy fairies who were now attacking Uriah in the most annoying manner possible, with Orium angrily pouting at him. Well, least she's not really hurting me, he rationalized after remembering what she did to that one Shinigami that attacked them. The ones they saw first were easily dispatched with his bow and Tsubaki. The ones that found them, Orium proved her frightening skill with her martial arts. It was embarrassing that she was handling the close quarters combat while he was too slow to stop them. He could hold his own, Orium just always attacked first. That's when he felt a familiar Reishi presence, one he only recognized from his father. What the hell? He wondered before feeling a fluctuation in Reishi that quickly dissipated. Uriah, what was that? Orium asked, recalling her sprites and calming down. That was Ichigo, and something else. Uriah said, being as vague as possible. The Vandenrike watches from the shadows. That shadows of Soul Society? How is this possible? He tried to figure out before deciding to double their efforts and progress. Come on Orium, we have work to do. Right. She said, matching the urgency in his tone. Inside Ichigo's inner world. Was this on your command? The Black Zanjutsu questioned, standing watchful over his charge and master. Are you sentient enough to make these commands? Or was this the order of your mindless dogs? Ichigo himself rested peacefully, unaware of events that took place. Well, that was boring. Came the warped voice of the real blade. King's showing hopeful progress though. Then the Quincy soldats are dead? The elder said. That's good. They might see the asset or threat that Ichigo is, but won't attack knowing he isn't vulnerable. He then noticed Ichigo healing faster. Yeah, they'll also be less inclined now knowing what might happen. The Hollow spoke. It'll take more than a bunch of nameless drones to capture Ichigo on our watch. Indeed. The old man said, watching Ichigo awaken from his slumber. Like maybe a cute girl with a nice rack. Someone like that one blonde chick dash. Shut up. With Ichigo. He roused himself from his slumber, releasing a yawn as he stretched himself and feeling several familiar pops in his joints and back. He forced himself to his feet and stretched out more. Thank God for my regenerative powers. He said to himself. Not only would I be sore, I'd be dead otherwise. Where do souls go when they die? Ichigo asked as he opened his eyes, only to be met with the picture of several dead bodies. All in white military uniforms with a Quincy cross that all seemed to have deep gashes in their bodies. He looked down to see his blade, stained red in gore. Let it go Ichigo, you have stuff to do. He said, choosing to ignore the bodies of the Quincy. If he was going to reach Yamamoto today, he could not afford any distractions. He proceeded to leave his little hideaway after calling his blade back to his hand. Squad 8 Barracks. Captain Kiraku, a female Shinigami with a stern expression, called to her lazing captain, "A Ryoka has appeared." Which one, Nanao? The lazy bearded man known as Shunsui Kiraku asked his secretary/lieutenant. Tatsuki gave them a description of her friends and vouched that Ichigo would never kill unless necessary. Based on what Arisawa said, he should be Yasutura Sato. She said. He's not permitted to fight a captain, but neither was Arisawa and Dash. And she sparred with Captain Swafon. There is a difference. He said, raising from his nap. Come on, let's go greet our guest. Squad 1 Barracks. Ichigo finally made it to the courtyard of the leader of the Godi I-13 space. The building stood there, tall and imposing as Ichigo strode over to his destination. Come on out already. Ichigo called out. I know I've kept you waiting, but I was held up. He felt an immense spiritual pressure come down on him as a hunched figure on the roof of the barracks stood up. Ichigo felt a savage nature much like his repressed instincts. As much as he'd hate to say it, Ichigo was excited. The man jumped off the roof of the barracks and came crashing down across from him. I admit I was losing patience. The Kenpeka said in a deep tone, the jingling of his bells adding somewhat to his menace. But that fight last night only served to excite me more. He stood to his full imposing height, showing his brutal and ragged form. Name's Kenpeka Zaraki, captain of Squad 11. And I'm pleased to finally meet you, Ichigo Kurosaki. He said with a savage grin. Chapter 20, Pact of Fighters. With Chad. The hours passed outside as he rested, inside he went through years of his life. The life he regretted as a kid, angry at everything and anyone just waiting for an excuse to lash out. The life he had because of his grandfather, helping others with his powerful fists while taking unbelievable punishment with his strong body. Now the life he lives, as an unbreakable shield to a mighty protector. His strength granted to one that helped him find a sense of meaning in his life, a best friend that he'd be ready to die for because he would do the same. He'd then defy death because he knew Ichigo would never forgive him for that. He chuckled slightly, finding humor in the contradiction of refusing his death when that was Ichigo's job description. He was brought out of his musing when he heard the shouts of Shinigami outside the warehouse he was sleeping in. Guess that's it for my nap. He mumbled before transforming his arm. He rose up and walked over to the door, the yelling and thudding getting louder and louder. He made a swift strike at one of the hinges, blowing a hole through the frame and quieting the crowd outside. He repeated that 3 more times, leaving the door very loose in its place. He backed up a little bit before charging and using the door as a makeshift ram. A good chunk of that crowd of Soul Reapers ended up unconscious from the sudden impact as Chad began his rampage through the crowd. Punches like lightning sending his opponents flying as he pretty much waded through the crowd. Throwing some around like discarded clothing, kicks that cleared a path like axes to wood, the intense cannon blasts of Reishi from his black right arm, more akin to a force of nature than a man to all the Shinigami against him. A group of 20 strong reduced to naught but mangled broken bones. Maybe I should try to hold back more. Chad wondered aloud as he studied the aftermath. Craters in the walls and streets with bent or broken swords all around him with piles of unconscious Soul Reapers. Oh well. He said before fishing out his locator and proceeding with his task. I wonder how Ichigo's doing. With Ichigo and Kenpeki. Kenpeki? Ichigo said, staring down his opponent. The greatest fighter of the court guard squads, the man who stands atop a mountain of corpses. He remembered the stories of the various title holders told by his teachers. All the hollows he faced, the hardest his teachers attacked him, none of it compared to the dark savagery of the man standing across from him. It was both unsettling and exciting for the young hybrid. Ikeko said you'd want to meet me. Any reason why? Because you're strong. Kenpeki responded, like it was the simplest thing in the world. My interest has always been in a good fight. Good, evil, justice, chaos? I don't care about any of that because none of it matters in a fight. He then adopted a confused scowl, thinking that Ichigo knew what he was talking about. Why should fighting need a reason? You fight for the sake of fighting. Ichigo said. Can't say I understand that. My fights usually ended up being disappointments because they were too weak or because they were holding back. Like Ikeku and Aizen. The battle-scarred man asked. I did get the feeling that Ikeku was holding back in a lot of his matches. But what about Aizen then? Ikeku needed to be taught a lesson, Ichigo said while his presence was turning darker. Aizen on the other hand must die. Zaraki felt an old familiar tension in his body, one he hasn't sensed in centuries. A sense that this opponent might kill him. Wow. Ichi can be really scary. The tension was broken as a small pink-haired little girl made her presence known. Ichigo looked down on the small lieutenant as the two calmed down. Looks like this can be a lot of fun, Kenny. She cheered as she ran back to her captain. Kenpeki smirked again as his lieutenant destroyed the tension. Yeah, it's been so long since I've had a good fight, he said, already unsheathing his blade. The small display Ichigo gave earlier put him on a slight edge, no longer needing to see if he could put up a good fight. Now get out of the way, Yachiroa, this could get messy. The small girl jumped off to her vantage point on top of the 1st Division barracks. Hey King, Zanjitsu spoke out to his wielder, there's something I wanna check out. You mind? Ichigo looked up to the small lieutenant, almost understanding his blade's interest in the girl. Something about her was off. Without saying anything he materialized his Zanpakuto's spirit, appearing as a familiar reflection of Ichigo with his skull mask, who disappeared just as quickly. Sorry, my Zanpakuto was interested in your lieutenant, Ichigo said, drawing his blade. Now, why don't you show me how to enjoy a fight? He growled before the two charged at each other, resulting in a loud clang. With pleasure. Kenpeki roared, already feeling his battle high coming on. With Chad. He kept on with his mission, following the signals to the next hotspot on his locator to place the next tag. No Shinigami was able to stop him, against his overwhelming strength and surprising speed and reaction abilities, they were leaves tackling a concrete wall. His signal was now coming from his immediate right, behind an 8-foot wall. The extension on his arm snapped open as he charged his energy. El Directo! He yelled, blasting a hole through the wall and removing or scaring off any other Soul Reaper in the area. He made his way through the hole and kept moving forward. When his way was blocked by one Shinigami, claiming to be a third seat, Chad just shoved him out of the way. The apparent third in command was shot through another wall. He only stopped when he saw the flower petals, and a man in a flowery kimono with a straw hat. Hello there, Yasutara Sato. The man said in a cheerful, lazy manner. I am Shunsui Kiraku, captain of Squad 8. The two continued to stare at each other, Kiraku with a smile against Chad's passive expression. All the while, flower petals kept falling, or was being tossed around by the female secretary Soul Reaper above them. Hey, Naneo. The captain called. The moments passed, you can stop now. She just kept on tossing. Naneo. Can you hear me? My sweet Naneo. Lovely little Nana Desh. She dumped the rest of the petals on him with no tact, annoyance clearly showing on her face. Does this happen often? Sato asked as Kiraku got out of the pile. Yeah, she's just shy is all, he said, brushing off the remaining flower petals. So, what now? Since you know my name, I'm guessing you know that I'm also not supposed to fight captains. Shunsui smiled and nodded. How is Tatsuki? She's fine. Quite popular with the members of the second squad for her martial arts skill. But there's some things I wanted to ask you, Yasutara Sato, he said, gaining a sense of seriousness about him. Chad immediately had his guard up in case he needed to run or defend himself. Will you join me for a drink? The captain said with a smile, pulling out a jug of sake with 2 small cups. After the initial shock wore off, he relaxed again but was still ready to move. Come on, it's a lovely day. Just sit down and have a few drinks while we chat, Shunsui said. Sorry, but no, Sato said, earning a surprised look from the captain. I appreciate the offer but I'm underage. I'm not supposed to drink any alcohol. Kiraku let out a sigh of disappointment. Well, that's a shame. This is some good stuff too. The two again just stood and waited as time passed. My lieutenant makes excellent tea, the captain offered. That works, Chad said as he dispelled his power and sat across from the captain. Naneo, could you be a dear and get us some tea and snacks? He asked his stern lieutenant who just disappeared after shooting him a glare. Why do you have to be so cold, my sweet Naneo? He cried with anime tears running down his face. Can you explain to me the current situation, Mr. Kiraku? Chad asked, seeing as he had nothing else to do. He remembered hearing about Shunsui Kiraku as one of the oldest captains of the 13 squads. Above all, a man that he did not want to make an enemy of. You mean with your friends? The captain clarified, getting a serious nod from the giant. Capture, dead or alive. Ichigo Kurosaki is considered a captain's only target. So whatever it is your friend has to say to old man Yama, it better be good. He said while they sensed a sudden burst of Ryutsu, Zanjutsu and Yachiro. That guy has no idea, does he? The hollow blade asked the child sitting at his side. Their gaze fixed on the hybrid and the berserker as they struggled against one another. The clashing of their blades were enough to be an orchestra of battle. Nope, he doesn't. Yachiro said with a melancholic smile. All he cares about is fighting, nothing else really matters. She explained to her companion. He understands himself perfectly and I help him with what he wants. If he wants to cripple himself so badly that he's just a shell of his real power, then that's fine. I've gotten used to him doing that. But because of all that, he's the closest to understanding himself. Even if he's blind to see it. Zanjutsu finished, seeing a close parallel between Ichigo and Kenpeki. The battle-hungry warrior was simplistic and chose to ignore what was right in front of him. The hybrid was complex but tackled it head-on. On was already powerful but was holding back, while the other had unlimited potential and had to earn it. Zaraki will lose in the end. The White Spirit said just as Ichigo was starting to get sloppy in their fight. Ichigo's too stubborn to die. Ichigo vs Kenpeki. The fight was even when it started. Slashes, blocks, stabs, dodges, clashes and grunts between the two as they struggled, showcasing their skills. Ichigo was fast but Kenpeki was experienced. No matter how he went at him, Kenpeki had a dodge or block ready. Unfortunately, something else was happening that affected Ichigo's performance. Ichigo was used to his opponents being level-headed or in fear of him. This man thrived on the feeling he was getting from fighting Ichigo. It wasn't like when Ichigo fought Zanjutsu because he knew his blade. The man across from him, the Kenpeki, was a savage beast that killed for sport, and he was getting stronger as the fight went on. It started to unnerve the hybrid and got slashed across his chest. Ah damn! He cursed as the burning pain rang out from the tear on his chest. A shallow cut, but it was not healing as quickly due to the blade fragment still in his back. Zaraki came on him with another attack, which Ichigo blocked but was overpowered as the chipped blade dug into his flesh. What the hell is wrong with me? He yelled out as the captain continued to cut and slash him. The damage was minimal but was building up. What's wrong, Ichigo? Kenpeki growled, feeling a level of disappointment in his enemy. I thought you wanted to learn how to enjoy fighting? Why are you cowering now? Ichigo froze, the battle-scarred man's words ringing in his ears. He hadn't been afraid since Urahara and Yoryuki drilled killing intent into his skull. He fought Aizen with the intention of... Wait, no I didn't. Ichigo realized. Aizen's goal was to spread chaos among the Soul Reapers. Everyone else was trying to capture me. Why is this affecting me so much? Even he isn't supposed to try to kill me, right? Ichigo struggled with the idea, feeling that if he wasn't careful with Zaraki then he was going to die. Regeneration just wouldn't work if he was cut in half. On the surface, Ichigo and Zaraki were pretty even, but there was more hidden deep within. A monster hiding underneath the battle-hungry warrior, that's what had the protector on edge. His mistake was fighting Zaraki like a man, when he needed to be more like a beast. Steeling himself, Ichigo did the best thing he could to calm himself down. What are you dash? The captain asked as Ichigo punched himself in the face with a loud resounding crack. Kenpeki could only watch as Ichigo took several breaths, each one becoming more and more even as he brought himself back to reality. Sorry, lost my nerve for a bit. Ichigo said, his injuries already healing. I wanted you to show me how to enjoy a fight, and you did. Ichigo's Ryutsu took on a noticeable shift to a more hollow-like one, fully aware of his audience. I was too focused. I just need to let myself go. He said as his eyes shifted. I promise to give you what you want. He said, glaring at the man with his black and gold eyes. Next thing Kenpei knew, Ichigo was in front of him making a long cut across his chest. Ichigo had a manic grin on his face, which matched Kenpei's own. "That's it," he said before their blades clashed once again. "This is what I was hoping for." He started laughing as they continued their fight. This continued as they both struck at the other, trying to come out on top. Both were in tatters and blood as their blades continued to find their marks. "This is the best," Kenpei yelled as his cut through Ichigo's shoulder, who left a dangerous mark on Kenpei's neck. They separated as Zaraki continued to laugh. "Thank you, Ichigo. Thank you for existing. Never have I come across someone like you," he said through his laughter. "There has only been one other person that has made me feel this way. No, you might even eclipse that." He stopped laughing, keeping that manic smile. "I can't give you anything but my full effort, Ichigo. Let's go." He ripped off his eye patch and unleashed his Ryutsu. All over the Shirai, people felt this battle. "With your Yuki, Ichigo," she thought, watching the two behemoths clash. "Be careful. Squad 4 barracks. Looks like the captain is having fun," Ikeko said as he and Yumichika were enjoying a few cups of tea as the bald warrior was visited by his friend. "He's way out of my league, I can tell that much. And the captain's about to use his trump card," the fifth seat said. "To think he was strong enough to push him that far." Unbeknownst to the two fighters was the current captain of the 4th Division. "Far from it, you two," she thought, feeling her lone scar on her chest ache a little. "The boy is undoing my greatest sin just a little bit. Either way, one of them will end up here, near the repentance cell." "Is that Ichigo?" Hanataro yelled, the massive Ryutsus clashing affecting them as a blizzard in the mountains. "Just what the hell is he?" Renji growled out as he helped keep their small group going. There was only one problem. "Yeah. Go Ichigo. Kick his ass." Ganju cheered, holding up their progress a bit. "Shut up and keep going," the lieutenant yelled. "Urayu and Orium. Let me go, Urayu." Orium yelled as she struggled against her Quincy companion's strength. "He needs help. Just let me go." "I can't do that," Urayu yelled. "Ichigo would never forgive me if you got hurt and I could have prevented it." She kept struggling, but it was weaker and weaker with every second, knowing that Ichigo would want her somewhere safe. With Urayu it was certainly much safer than wandering around on her own trying to find whatever fight Ichigo was in the middle of. "Calm down, Orium. Ichigo has the strongest will of anyone I've ever known. He'll survive. We have to keep moving," he urged one last time before she started crying. "Even with my powers, I'd only be in his way." She sobbed before he turned her around and hugged her. "Think of it more as, waiting for him to come home and get patched up," he said when she calmed down. "After all, think about him with a couple scars. For once," he said. Orium did just that, and a drip of blood came out of her nose. "Doesn't sound so bad now, does it?" He waited for a response, but she was clearly in her own little world. "And I lost her. Good job, idiot." He berated himself before throwing her over his shoulder and carrying her off. "Chad and Kiraku. Looks like things are getting a little hectic over there," Shunsui noted as he munched on another rice cracker. "So as I was saying, why are you here? Your friend seems fixated on meeting with the old man and saving Rukia." He took a drink of his tea while looking Sato in the eye. "His reason makes sense. But what about you?" "There's not much to it," Chad said. "Ichigo is my friend, if he needs my help I'll give it. Deliver a message, help him move, fight off a group of thugs, even if it puts my life on the line I'd help him. Heh, he must be a good friend to have that kind of loyalty out of you," Kiraku noted, thinking of his own best friend in a sickly captain. "To be completely honest, Kiraku, if he didn't tell me to not fight a losing battle, we'd be fighting right now." This earned a look from the lazy captain. "Ichigo swore to me that if there was anything I'd give my life for, then so would he. All he asked was that I do the same. It's a meeting that gave me purpose." The captain burst out laughing in noticeable cheer. Then I'll have to thank him for this nice conversation. He reached out and laid a hand on his shoulder. You're a good man, Yasutara Sato. It's a shame I have to put you in the detention cell. You have your duties, I had mine. Chad said as they finished their picnic. With Tatsuki. Come on. I've got restraints on and I'm still beating you. Tatsuki yelled out, jumping around with fantastic agility while wearing cuffs on her wrists and ankles, kicking and punching various members of the 2nd Division. She had enough favor with SWAFON to keep up her martial arts skills, but only under strict supervision. Most of the squad took it to mean, the ones that get to watch are fine, everyone else needs to improve. There were only 5 people watching, excluding the lieutenant who was turned into Tatsuki's punching bag as a result of his embarrassing defeat. Tatsuki needed the distraction, feeling Ichigo's fight was putting her on edge as well. Ichigo, if you die, I'm gonna be pissed. She thought before jumping and kicking another guy in the head. You win, then I'm getting that sexy nurse outfit I found. Zanjitsu and Yachiro. Ichigo seems like a good guy. Yachiro said with a smile, almost envious of the protector. Yeah. Zaraki is going say something stupid soon. Zanjitsu bluntly said. With Ichigo and Zaraki. Fine. Call out your Zanpakuto. Ichigo called out. Zaraki merely raised an eyebrow. My Zanpakuto doesn't have a name. He bluntly said, destroying the mood of the fight. What? Ichigo dryly asked. He thought he saw Zanjitsu give himself a tired facepalm. My spiritual pressure is so great that no seal can contain it. This is the true form of my Zanpakuto. He declared. You are a captain of the Godi I-13, telling me you have no connection to your blade, despite X number of years, decades even, of using it. Ichigo tried to clarify. Zanpakuto are simply weapons for killing, that's all there is to it. He defended ignorantly. Even if they do have spirits of their own, they are simply tools of battle. Is he for real? Ichigo asked himself as he felt his eye twitch. The look in Zaraki's eyes told him that he believed what he was saying. Zanjitsu. Ichigo called out, making his blade turn and his spirit appear at his side. Yep. The hollow blade asked, just as irritated. I'm going to start hurting him now, I don't know if I'll stop. Ichigo almost growled out. Mask. Zanjitsu asked, concerned about how far this was going to go. I honestly do not care at this point. He said before a black vortex of Reishi consumed the both of them. When it calmed down, it revealed Ichigo with his red and white hollow mask. Playtime's over, Zaraki. He said before spinning his blade by the cloth. I'm ending this. Ending. Zaraki laughed. This is just getting start. He was interrupted by Ichigo's massive blade slamming into his stomach and sending him flying with a deep slash. The blade returned to Ichigo's hand as he spun it again. He said he's releasing his full power, but even now it's steadily increasing to match my own. Ichigo observed, sensing the growing power in the Kenpeki. Zaraki soon got back up, his psychotic smile still on his face. What's happening? Kenpeki made a downward slash on Ichigo, but it stopped cold on his shoulder. Ichigo kicked him back and brought his blade down like a buzzsaw on Zaraki. He blocked, but the repeated slashes made several cuts in the behemoth, and his power kept growing. What am I feeling from this guy? Ichigo charged at his opponent, raising his arm to block another slash. The chipped sword connected and slowly dug its way through his arm. Ichigo quickly tilted his arm and slashed down with Zanjitsu, coming out with a thin slice out of his forearm. And now he's cut through my arrow. Ichigo took his chance to kick off of Kenpeki and into the air. Take this, Getsuga Tensho. He yelled, swinging his blade wildly downward and sending a barrage of Reishi blasts. All that power, he can't even hear his own Zanpakuto, and all he wants is to fight. Even unrestrained he's holding back. Not consciously at least. Zanjitsu let slip. It seems like he has the most insulting seal on himself. The elder version said. He holds back because of it. Wait, is he? Ichigo asked his spirits as he landed. Zaraki marching out of the darkness, radiating his yellow light, highlighting all the burns, cuts, and blood he's covered in. Come on, Ichigo. He said, staggering a little, not used to this level of damage anymore. I'm not done yet. He charged at Ichigo, fully enjoying himself despite the condition he was in. Until Ichigo froze him with a single statement. You're afraid to kill me, aren't you? Kenpeki stopped, a storm of emotions going through his head. Confusion at the general statement and anger that he would be afraid of anything. What the hell are you talking about? He demanded. Who could possibly be afraid to kill their enemy? I killed hundreds for fun, so why should I be afraid of another's blood staining my sword? You said it yourself, you thank me for existing. Ichigo explained, dispelling his mask. You've gone so long without a truly worthy opponent that you are incapable of releasing your true strength out of fear that you'll never find a worthy challenge again. Zaraki continued to glare at his opponent and hating the fact that, on some level, this lecture was making sense to him. Don't mock me. Come at me like you mean it. Prove me wrong and ram that chipped blade through my heart. The hybrid yelled, demanding action from his enemy. Quit your quivering and attack. And Kenpeki did. He charged at Ichigo with his blade, aimed straight for the boy's heart. Time slowed for the both of them as the blade inched closer to its target. For the slightest instant, however, it became apparent to the captain. Ichigo was right. Right about him. He didn't want to kill such a worthy match, not when he could have more battles like they just had. He tried to avoid the fatal strike before he felt a hand grasp his own. What? He saw Ichigo's grab the blade and skewer himself through the chest. Blood slowly dripped from his wound as Ichigo pulled himself further down the blade, coughing up some blood on the way down, until he came face to face with the battle-hungry captain. He took hold of the man's haori and slammed their skulls together. Now listen here, you bastard! The hybrid yelled. You will never be able to kill me. Stab me, cut me, slash me, whatever, I will never die by your hand. If you want an opponent to fight you, then that's what I'll be. Kenpeki looked at the defiant boy on his sword, and felt a strange sense of hope in his chest. Become my ally, fight by my side, and I will be the last opponent you will ever face. All others will be a warm-up for our next fight. Ichigo then stabbed Kenpeki through the chest, just barely missing anything vital. This is our pact. I will be that fighter you've been waiting for, and you will return to your true strength, or I'll kill you trying. Do you accept this? Ichigo asked, glaring at his enemy as the shock fell from the man's eyes. Slowly he began laughing excitedly, striking terror in many hearts as the unbridled joy of Zaraki filled the air. Very well then, Ichigo, I accept. He whispered with tears of happiness streaming down his face. It was a new feeling for him, hope that he finally found someone on his level. And he liked it. Ichigo pried out the sword from Zaraki and threw him to the side, before blasting him away with a point-blank zero. He'll be fine, right? He asked his blade as Zanjutsu materialized again and the small pink-haired Yachiro came down. Yeah, Kenny will be fine. She chirped excitedly. He's really tough. Thank you for fighting him, Ichi. She said before turning to where her partner went. You better keep your promise, or I'm gonna be really mad. K. Don't worry. Zanjutsu said. When we get the time, there'll be around too. Yachiro beamed the duo a smile before turning to leave. He'll call you by your real name soon enough. He said before she disappeared. The two looked on before something registered with the strawberry. Wait, is she? He asked his blade. Yes, she is. He said before pulling out the sword in his partner's chest. Damn it. That hurts. Ichigo cried out, the blade tearing through his body as he dropped to his hands and knees. That was a bad idea. He began healing. Just leave a scar, I need that for our agreement. He said while the blood stopped flowing. After a few seconds passed, he rose up and staggered his way towards the doors of the 1st Division's barracks. With Chad and Kiraku. So you're certain that the head captain will hear Ichigo out? The giant asked the captain as they made their way to the prisoner cells. Of course, he was interested in your friend for a long time. He can be a reasonable man. He assured Sato before they heard an explosion rock the Siriti. They turned to see a tower of fire and smoke rise in the distance. What is that? Chad asked, afraid for his friends. That was Old Man Yama. Check the description for the links to the author.